right, while folks continue to trickle in, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Colton Bright with CGS, and I'm happy to welcome you for our webinar today on the changing landscape of graduate recruitment and marketing. So as we move into the presentation, I want to move forward and cover some basic information for today. So if you've attended CGS webinars in the past, you'll be familiar with this information, but we're going to want your questions submitted through the Q&A feature in the Zoom toolbar. We will be looking to answer those questions throughout the time we have together, and then we'll be responding to them in the chat and also answering those from our presenters as well. And then following the presentation, the recording and presentation slides will be emailed to registrants and posted on the CGS website. So in our webinar library, you will be able to watch back and get any of the information that you may have missed today. The chat is available to all attendees, and we absolutely encourage you to utilize that. So I am going to pass it over to my colleague, Julia Kent, who's the Vice President of Best Practices and Strategic Initiatives at CGS, and we'll take it from here.
Thank you, Colton, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I know that today's topic is a really timely one. CGS members consistently identify graduate student recruitment as one of their most pressing issues, and this is increasingly the case as new pressures are being placed upon graduate institutions. Today's webinar will give us an opportunity to hear from leaders from 3 CGS member institutions. And I'd like to thank each one of you for offering your expertise. I'll let Sean Gallagher do the introductions in just a moment. I'd also like to thank Huron Consulting Group for their programmatic and financial support of today's webinar, and also for their participation in the CGS Sustaining Membership Network, which allows companies to demonstrate their commitment to advancing graduate education. Huron will be presenting a lightning session at the upcoming annual meeting in December, and we hope that you'll be able to attend that and other sessions here in Washington, D.C. So at this time, I'm pleased to introduce Sean Gallagher, who will serve as the webinar moderator today and who will introduce the panel. Sean is a director in Huron's Strategy and Operations Group, where his work focuses on academic strategy and graduate, professional, and online education. He joined Huron in 2023 from Northeastern University, where he worked for 14 years in roles including Chief Strategy Officer, Executive Professor of Educational Policy, and founder and Executive Director of the Center for the Future of Higher Education and Talent Strategy. Sean is the author of a book, The Future of University Credentials, published by Harvard Education Press, and he has been a frequent contributor to CGS forums and projects over the years as an advisory board member or presenter. At this point, I'm pleased to pass the presentation over to Sean.
Thank you, Julia, and good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are. Appreciate you joining us for today's discussion. We have about 40 minutes, so we're really looking forward to a great interactive dialogue. And it's just great to be back with the CGS community. As Julia mentioned, it's a changing and challenging time in graduate education, which has been for the last several years one of the bright spots in the U.S. higher education sector. And we're looking forward to digging into what's happening in terms of graduate recruitment and marketing and some of the new pressures, ideas, and opportunities. I'm going to have each of the panelists talk a bit about themselves and their background. So very pleased to be joined by Christopher Finelli, who is the Dean of the Graduate School and Associate Provost for Graduate Continuing and Lifelong Education at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Dan Horn, Associate Vice Dean for Professional Education at the Whiting School of Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. And Celia Marshik, who is the Dean of the Graduate School and Vice Provost for Graduate and Professional Education at Stony Brook University. So Celia, if you could kick us off, just please describe a little bit about your role and institution.
Thanks, Sean. So again, Celia Marshik, and I'm at Stony Brook University, which is one of the 2 flagships in the State University of New York system. My role covers all graduate degrees across the campus, And we started with a marketing and communications team in 2023. I do also just want to say for background that graduate admissions was not under the graduate school when I started in my role, but it too moved under the graduate school in 2023. So I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who has admissions in-house and has connected with that a marketing and communications team and also a graduate recruiter, which I'll be happy to return to later.
Wonderful. Thank you, Celia. And Dan, if you'd like to go next.
Sure, sure, Sean. Thanks. I'm Dan Horn. I'm the Associate Vice Dean for Professional Education at the Johns Hopkins Whiting School of Engineering. And we have three different verticals within the professional education portfolio. First is our 25 online master's degrees that serve around 6,500 students in any given year. Second, we have a non-credit executive and professional education portfolio. And third, we have a professional doctoral degree program that we call the Doctor of Engineering. So that's professional education at the School of Engineering. And then, as you might expect, there's also an on-campus graduate program portfolio at the School of Engineering, overseen by a colleague of mine. And those programs tend to be more research focused, and they serve students who may want to enter academia following degree completion. So I'll be speaking from the perspective of professional education.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. Chris, would you like to go next?
Sure, and thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Chris Finelli from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I currently serve as Dean of the Graduate School and Associate Provost for Graduate Continuing and Lifelong Education. Just a bit of context, UNCW is an R2. We're not a flagship. We have 6 doctoral programs and just about 40 master's programs. Our 3,800 students, about 70% of them are in fully online programs. And in addition to the graduate school, I oversee continuing professional education, which is a fairly small office, and our Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which serves the over 50 population in our region. So I'll be happy to speak from any of those perspectives, in particular from the R2 and maybe a recent R2, just formerly comprehensive master's. So
wonderful. Well, thank you all again for the time and expertise today. Want to start off at kind of a high level and structural level. Celia referenced this in terms of the types of marketing and enrollment resources, that are within the graduate school. So I wonder, maybe we'll begin with Celia, if you could just speak to, particularly relative to how things were years ago, and maybe what the market dynamics were that may have led to maybe new investments, new people, how you work with agencies, those types of dynamics and issues.
Sure. So like a lot of R01 institutions, we used to be very decentralized with our, admissions processes, our marketing, our recruitment. And, 3-4 years ago, we just realized that wasn't cutting it anymore. Faculty and staff are still definitely the first line of communication with students who are interested in their programs. But we really needed to get on board with a lot of updated technology, a lot of updated outreach efforts. So the graduate school became a centralized resource for all of our programs for their marketing and communications to prospective students. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. So our marketing and communications team works with our admissions team to make sure that all of our programs are aware of kind of best practices for recruiting graduate students. And that can mean things like requests for information forms on program websites. We were not a university that had many of those. Now, almost all of our programs have requests for information forms. And we've done a lot to educate our individual programs about the capacities of Slate. I don't know if my other 2 colleagues use Slate as a tool, but it has a lot of great capabilities in there that our programs weren't always aware of, whether it was using a scheduler for one-on-one meetings or for bigger meetings. And we've also worked really closely with our programs to help them understand that they can build drip campaigns for email. So once somebody fills out that RFI form, we've been working with them to make sure that they've got student profiles that go out to those potential applicants, that we send highlights of the particular strengths of programs and other information that we know prospective students are really interested in. So we are the centralized hub for that. My marketing and communications team actually has office hours for programs, so they can come and get tips on, website, again, on social media, on anything that they might want to do. And then we also work on a lot of those things centrally here to help support them. And I did also want to say, I mentioned in my introduction that we do have a graduate recruiter. I know that's not a position that a lot of schools have anymore. But this is a person who offers centralized support, particularly for recruiting students to our master's programs. For doctoral programs, we definitely think faculty are the first line of communication there. But for master's students, this recruiter goes to fairs, she does information sessions. We're working on setting up a campus tour process. So she's really helping to spearhead the kind of centralized, broad-based communication about the excellence of the master's programs we have to offer.
Thank you. Chris or Dan, I wonder, how's that compare to how you're structured? And in particular, any areas of new investment or adaptation in terms of the recruiting environment? And then there's a few other themes we could get into as well.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure, I'd be happy to go. Thanks. So Celia used the word decentralized. That is our current status. So decentralization is how we've operated at the graduate level for my entire 20 years at UNCW. It does create some challenges, and in particular in the marketing space. The graduate school has never been really resourced. And to the extent that colleges have their own resources, it's really uneven. Some of our colleges are very well resourced, market very well, and some of our colleges not so much. And so you see that unevenness. The way we've been kind of moving and the way we've been trying to counter that is the graduate school partners with our undergraduate admissions office, which does have some capability there. And we've been working with them to give them some information, have them start introducing our programs. We're actually currently partnering with Huron on a marketing campaign. And I think the other place that we've been successful, in particular in the online space, is we work with RisePoint and other OPMs to market our online programs, and they've been successful in that realm. So to the extent that we can't do it ourselves, we partner with anyone who's willing to partner with us.
And I'll just tack on to that. At Johns Hopkins, there are 12 divisions at Johns Hopkins, and graduate program marketing and recruitment resides within the school. And within the School of Engineering, we have one team that handles marketing and recruitment for all of our graduate programs, both online and on ground. And in truth, I'm pleased about this, although perhaps my colleagues, it's much to their chagrin, but the marketing and recruitment team devotes much more time to recruiting the online students than it does to the on-site students. We find that competition is much stiffer for the online students. In the online space, the programs tend to have rolling admissions, and you can start at multiple points throughout the year. So following up with leads is very time sensitive. The marketing and recruitment vendors have stats, and there might be some on this call, but they have stats that will convince you that the first school to get back to a lead will win that student. And some of those stats may be a little overblown, but I think response time is absolutely critical in the online market. And so in terms of resources that we've built out, I mean, in addition to working with a vendor, a marketing and recruitment vendor, we've built out our own in-house lead nurturing team with a mix of, I want to say 2 full-time staff members and a whole bunch of part-time students. It's not something that we want to leave to vendors because we feel like you really need to be well informed about our programs, and we think it's easier to train our own staff for lead nurturing. Plus, we at Hopkins, we have extremely talented students, and they can pick this up very quickly. And then I'll just want to add, in terms of a marketing budget, our spend is about 10 times greater for the online program campaigns than it is for the on-site program campaigns at the graduate level. So I hope that gives you a little bit of context about how we work at Hopkins Engineering.
That's great. And I think we'll come back to the online environment in particular. Wanted to ask about technology. Celia mentioned Slate, which sounded new. And obviously, in terms of that response time and the online environment, there's a lot more that's mediated through technology. So just wonder if you could speak to the types of technologies and tools that maybe you're using for marketing and recruitment and what that's entailed compared to, say, 2 or 3 years ago. Would anyone like to comment on that?
I mean, I already mentioned Slate. I think, technologies and tools, obviously social media still plays a big role. We found it really important to have a robust social media presence that really focuses on profiles of current students and profiles of alumni to show the ROI and also the student experience. I will say in terms of other tech, we have sort of dipped our toes in the water a little bit. So we've used some secret shopper programs to take a look at some of our websites once, and we've only had that done once we've had them sort of renovated because we really want to see, does this now speak to the market? We've got some very old websites that we would never have a secret shopper look at because you'd know already the laundry list will be quite long. So we've done that with EAB. And then the other sort of technology tool that we use is Lightcast. We do use that for making data-driven decisions, partly about new program offerings, but also about, what are the careers associated with different degree programs to use for, again, either the email that is going out to prospective applicants or, to showcase on websites around the campus.
Yeah, we use Slate as well at Johns Hopkins for to gather information on leads and to communicate with applicants. We also use Lightcast for market research purposes, as Celia just mentioned, both for our credit-bearing offerings and our non-credit offerings, where it actually might be even more relevant. And we're trying to build our own tools, our own AI tools, which is something, to your point, Sean, that we were not doing 2 and 3 years ago. And so happy to talk about that now or later, but that's definitely on the horizon for us.
Great. Chris, was there anything you wanted to add there? Or we could also talk about AI.
Yeah. So we're recent converts to Slate. We're in our first semester using Slate, so I'm really interested to hear my colleagues. And really still learning about the tools there. I think what we've been doing on the AI front is mostly around transcript evaluation, not necessarily the marketing piece. We've been investing in our international marketing and trying to bring in more international students. Timing maybe suspect on that, given national trends. But as we were doing that, we were bringing in all the transcripts and doing evaluations in-house, and we use Acro's AI tools, but we've developed some in-house AI capability as well for transcript evaluation.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, there are some questions in the chat, and we encourage everyone to put your questions there. We'll try to address whatever we can get to. But a few of them were about AI, and then we had AI come up. Dan, you mentioned some tools that you're developing. Curious in general, are there just new approaches? How are you using AI in recruitment and in marketing?
Yeah, so first, I know this isn't earth-shattering, but a chatbot, right? So we get a lot of questions, a lot of common questions, and so we figured we can stand up a chatbot that can answer the questions posed by leads, posed by applicants, posed by current students. So it can help us in a number of different ways. It could relieve pressure from our admissions staff, from our advising staff. As Chris just mentioned, we have application assistants, is what we call them, that can scan undergrad transcripts to speed up the time to decision on an application, and particularly helpful with international applicants. And we're building, unrelated to marketing, we're building a student assistant, which basically takes all the information in an online course, and it can act like a student's personal tutor. But I think that's farther down the road. Right now, that it's the chatbot and the application assistants where we're probably seeing the most the most effective use.
Great. And Celia, any AI use at Stony Brook?
So not yet in the graduate school. Our enrollment management team does have a chatbot for the undergraduate applicants. I'm very pleased to say I've got a big team in my grad admissions department, both of full-time staff and also graduate and undergraduate student workers who can answer a lot of those frontline questions. But I agree, chatbots are a great use for that because you do get some very common questions. So we will look at that once we see how our enrollment management team is managing with theirs.
Another area that AI is having an impact is in search, right? And how students find programs. Search engine optimization, you put a query into Google and then you get an AI response. Have any of you seen new behaviors or just shifts in how your websites need to look or just how students are behaving in terms of using AI or search engines in new ways?
Yeah, by far the biggest challenge for us is the drop in organic traffic due to the AI overviews. We spent years optimizing our SEO in order to have strong page ranks, and then Google just and the other search engines just turned that completely upside down. And then we have to respond, right? And I'm responsible for all aspects of the business, the academic side, the operations side, marketing and recruitment side. And I'm actually seeing parallels with AI across these different streams. So in the same way that faculty are trying to stay one step ahead of AI in the classroom, our marketing staff are attempting to do the same with AI search, right? And so how do we address this? Well, our strategy is, again, not probably not anything that's too unusual to this audience, but we are doubling down on content on our site, particularly blogs, and we'll start experimenting with advertising on AI overview as soon as they make that available to us. We used to see significantly more organic leads, but now we're finding that our leads are more likely to be paid, which is, of course, driving up our cost. So, it's fun trying to keep up with AI. It can be taxing, though, and on the staff, but that's the job.
Yeah,
Chris, oh, sorry, go ahead, Celia, go ahead.
So I was just going to add that one of the ways the decentralization shows at our institution is every individual department and therefore degree program was responsible for their own website, and they still are. And many of them have a real pride of ownership in that. And so what we've largely tried to do in response to AI and in response to, some of the paid search is to work really closely with our programs to make sure that those websites are highlighting the content and using the terms that we know both AI and individual students are using when they're searching. So working really closely with the programs to help them update their own material, but we are also creating landing pages for programs to use if they want to do a paid search program, a paid search campaign, and those really focus on lead generation and highlighting program features that we know prospective students are really interested in. How long will it take me? What will it cost me? What are the career outcomes? Those kinds of things. So it's a balancing act for us, trying to serve as a kind of guiding force for our programs to help them do the right things on their own pages, and then to have these particular landing pages that we help to create that they can use if they want to take that next step.
Thank you. There's actually a few questions about the mention of AI and transcript evaluation. And I guess, that's part of the enrollment process. So Chris and Dan, I think you both mentioned that. Could you just share a little bit more on what it is you're doing there or what types of tools you might be using?
Sure. So our goal in this was to knock down as many barriers for international applicants as possible, including the transcript, the course by course transcript evaluation that was required. We still require that, but it's on the back end of the process now. And so that meant we had to do some evaluation in-house to generate course lists or generate a GPA, an equivalent GPA. And so we do use a variety of tools, commercial tools, but then in-house tools to read transcripts, come up with equivalent GPAs, and give our programs a quick summary of the application and the transcript, so that our programs don't have to wade through the English translation of the transcript on their own. So that's basically what we've been doing. We're a Microsoft school, so Copilot is pretty much what we have, but we've learned how to leverage Copilot's agent abilities and creating agents to do some of this stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, and we're using it in the same way for international applicants. In the West or whatever course by course evaluation that we currently require is a barrier to students. It's expensive and it takes time, and so we wanted to knock that down, and so we're attempting to do it ourselves essentially, by having a tool evaluate the transcript. Actually going, if they say, I went to this university, the AI tool can go out and find the course description. In China, Calculus 1 is called one thing, in India, it's called something else. And so the tool can make those equivalencies for us. It can calculate, it can do an undergrad GPA conversion. And even for domestic applicants, we consider not just their undergrad GPA, but also their GPA in the second half of the degree. So rather than one of our staff members hand calculating that, a tool can do that for us.
Very interesting. Well, let's talk about international student recruiting for a bit. Obviously, that's a challenging area right now for a variety of reasons, visa delays and shifts in policy and shifts in demand. Wonder, in this new environment of the past year, what are you finding is working in international student recruitment? Are there new things that you've tried? And would just love to hear a bit about that from each of you.
So I'll just say that, one of the places we've really noticed the softening in the market is in Southeast Asia. That's been historically a very strong recruiting ground for us, big programs and ones you might expect, right? Computer science, data science, programs like that with a lot of students from Southeast Asia. So, what we found is it puts more emphasis on you need to connect with those students, in that market, but also try to diversify to other markets. I think we were, frankly, as an institution, overly reliant on 2 countries, and we're trying to address that. So, one of the ways that we have done that is we have some in-country representatives, and that's very new for us. They do recruit for both our undergraduate programs as well as our graduate programs. But that is a really great way to have somebody on the ground who speaks the language, who's in country, who can go to events, but also meet one-on-one with students, and who knows Stony Brook really well, and so can answer their questions about why this might be a good institution for them as they're thinking about applying. And then also having them on ground to help students through the application process, and then if the students have decisions to make, to help them make those decisions. So it's really the personal connection that we've been pursuing to try to address, that the students are just not coming in over the transom the ways they used to. And what we've been hearing from, the people who work in country is that it's increasingly rare for international students to just sort of go out on their own and decide where they're going to apply. They really are looking for guidance. And so having people on the ground does help a lot in that way.
Yeah, we're in a similar boat. Actually, we probably have far fewer international students than either of my colleagues. And just to give a sense of where we're at, our yield from our international applications last year was about 3 to 5% after all the visa problems our students had. So we saw a real collapse in our international incoming class. We've worked with agents on the ground in Southeast Asia, and that's been successful. That has driven our applications up. And I think there's a couple of things that we learned in our process. One is working with agents really does work. There's a couple different payment models. One is fronted by the student. which seems to yield less. But if the institution is directly contracted with the company, then that seems to yield a bit better. But just looping back to social media, word of mouth matters, and having a student who has had a good experience at your institution put that on social media actually drives a fair bit of reputation, and that's been eye-opening for me. That's not tech or anything like that, but that's been eye-opening.
Thank you. That's great. I saw some nodding with word of mouth. Any added perspectives on word of mouth marketing?
Yeah, I that's always been one of our strongest recruiting tactics, is to make sure that the current students have a great experience, and then they communicate that to others. In the online space, as many of you all might know, that international student recruitment is extremely difficult. The Chinese Ministry of Education will not confirm an online degree. So if you're a Chinese citizen looking for a civil service job, or if you're a Chinese citizen and you want a higher degree that's contingent upon having earned a degree taken online, you're out of luck. So we don't see very many Chinese residents applying for online degrees. We have difficulty recruiting Indian students for a completely different reason. Our price point is just a barrier for them. If they're going to pay $55,000 for a master's degree, they want to come to the US and they want to experience life in a major American city, potentially earn a job here following degree completion. And an online degree like those that we offer, it won't earn them a student visa. It certainly won't earn them an H-1B visa. So ironically, I think the majority of our on-ground students are international, and the majority of our online students are domestic. Actually, it's more than the majority. About 96% of our online students are domestic. Vendors will tell you that you can be successful with online programs overseas, but you need to be price competitive. And in India, they're talking about somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000, which we can't reach. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, online is certainly a theme that we wanted to get to. It's come up a few times. Celia, when you think about online degree programs at Stony Brook, what are you finding works, and how are you thinking about that market?
So for us, one of the things that we have discovered is most of our online students actually come from our geographical area. They might want online because it's convenient for them, right? It fits into their schedule. They don't have to commute. But there is something comforting about having the college down the road. So if you need to see someone, if you want to make an appointment with a faculty member, you can do that. So that's really one of the spaces we've been thinking a lot about is, what in the New York State metropolitan area, which is really what feeds us, what are the online degrees that students are interested in that might allow them to come back to graduate school without, obviously the commute time and having to be on campus. So that's been top of mind for us.
Thank you. And Chris, I know UNC Wilmington is doing more online. What are your perspectives on online marketing and recruitment, and what that transition takes?
Sure. So a couple things. One, I mentioned the use of OPMs, and we do partner with RisePoint on a couple of our programs. And in North Carolina, the UNC system has started its own OPM called Project Kitty Hawk. And so we're looking at partnering with them as well. We've doubled our graduate enrollment in the past 7 years. And the vast majority of that, probably almost all of that, is in the online space. And that's really by growing our MBA program, our nursing programs. There's our Masters of Health Administration program has done really well, our Doctor of Nursing Practice. So professional degrees have done really well. And I'll say what hasn't worked are more niche programs. So respiratory therapy is a great program here, but it didn't work with OPM. It couldn't scale as quickly as we had wanted. And so you really have to look at what degrees students are wanting, obviously, And then you're also looking at the portfolio of degrees that you're willing to work with an OPM with. Sometimes it's not just a single degree. You have to partner on a portfolio of degrees. So we've done well there. I'll say we've been really successful with programs that have been online from the ground up. So our nursing program in particular was built as an online program, our RN to BSN program, and now our Masters of Nursing, Nurse Educator concentration built from the ground up as an online program. Where we've seen struggles is trying to layer an online program on top of an existing face-to-face program. Faculty are entrenched in what they're doing for obvious reasons. And so it's hard to break out of that mold and have them go in a different direction, especially at a place like ours where resources tend to be limited, and being able to pay faculty to do different types of online courses in addition to their regular job is tough. So.
And recognizing that Dan's focus is exclusively online, Celia, do you have any perspectives on where you have that blending of a program? You mentioned working with programs and faculty earlier, a program that might have an online version and a traditional on-ground version, and just how the marketing differs?
Yeah, so we have those mixes in our College of Business in particular. So we will have, we've got a robust face-to-face program, but also really strong online programs. I think the marketing is the difference is you want to show those students, if you select the online option, here are some students, again, who have had that experience, who are speaking to you, and you're not just showing them the students who came to the face-to-face version. So, making sure that you're showing students in the actual program that they would participate in when you're doing your marketing and communications. I do want to say to Chris's point, I think it is absolutely right that it's easier to build these really well from the ground up than to try to get a program that's already up and running to switch. We do have some support for that on campus, and we're working with some programs on that right now, but it's a slower process. And you're absolutely right. I'm a faculty member. I taught for 20 years in my department. It is awfully hard once you're used to delivering content in the classroom to pivot, unless of course a pandemic forces you to do that. But on the regular, it's hard to get faculty to do that because they're busy, So I just did want to underline that point. I thought it was a good one.
Thank you. So you each have professional education in portfolio. I know non-credit was mentioned earlier. And as Julia mentioned in the intro, I've had the privilege of working with CGS in the past and some of the micro-credential research projects. Wondered if you could speak to, there's non-credit and professional and micro-credentials types of activities within the portfolio, but there's a lot of discussion about those being on-ramps or bridges to a graduate degree program potentially. Just wondered if you could each comment on non-credit professional programs and perhaps how that factors into the marketing for, say, a master's degree or anything else you'd like to add. Dan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So to a large extent, we view the non-credit market as different from the degree-seeking market. Someone enrolling in a 3-month, $500 certificate program often has different goals and different resources available to them as someone who's enrolling in a 3-year, $55,000 master's degree program. But we are starting to see the line between the two markets become a bit more permeable. First, I think some learners want to test themselves to see if they're ready to return to school for a graduate program, and they want to test drive the school that they're considering. So having them start with a stackable credential makes sense. They don't want to enroll in a completely detached certificate program that won't have any transferability to a master's degree. And then on the flip side, it seems kind of strange that a learner earning that 3-month $500 certificate gets a credential that can be uploaded to their LinkedIn account immediately with associated learning outcomes. But someone who goes through the very rigorous graduate level course gets a transcript with the name of the course on it. And often the name is abbreviated to fit on one line, and they have to wait 3 years to earn a degree before anything can be added to LinkedIn. we at Hopkins have been slow to the badging game, but we're catching up. And I think that will become more and more important to us. We want to give our master's degree students access to micro credentials. And we have been, you mentioned the bridge program, so we have been heavily invested in bridge programs. A lot of our students are career changers, or their undergrad degrees just didn't fully prepare them for our technical master's degree programs in fields like computer science and data science and AI. And we want to make it easy for them to transition. So we bundle the prerequisite courses that a career changer would need to take into what we call a bridge program. We discount these courses significantly by about 80% because they don't actually count toward the degree. These are undergrad level courses. And we have seen very strong positive feedback from students around these bridge programs, these sort of ramps up to a master's degree.
Celia, perspectives on professional education and non-credit stackable credentials if you have them?
Yeah, so I'm taking notes from Dan. I think Dan is clearly the expert in this area. We have not played very extensively in the non-credit space yet. But one of the things SUNY started requiring of all of its campuses recently is that if we're proposing an advanced certificate in any particular area, there has to be a master's program that it rolls up to. We no longer can propose a certificate that does not stack to that larger credential. And I think that's really important because I think Dan's right that somebody comes for a certificate, they're not exactly sure what that long-term career plan might be, but if you're lucky and they get really excited, you want to make it easy for them to then move on to that higher credential. So that's been a really important thing for us as we're building curriculum.
Thank you. And Chris, your perspectives on this topic.
Yeah, we've done a couple of things there's the multi-week certification, which is really for career people who are looking at advancing their career. We do have some online modules that we've built to give a pretty, I'll say, small badge, but badges are great because, as Dan mentioned, they are a symbol, they are a transcript. It's the whole thing right in one unit. But we've got badges that are for, say, less than 10 hours. And we've had faculty build out modules that are essentially an introductory course for their program. And then, once you get your little badge, there's a little video pops up, says, hey, if you really like this, come apply for esports management or something like that. So explicit advertising through using those badges as well. But and the other way we're using our non-credit avenues, we're slowly but surely building out policies and processes for credit for prior learning that go beyond, say, AP exams and the more traditional ways that we give students credit for prior learning. So we're building those avenues as well, which are explicit bridges right from the non-credit world to the for-credit world.
Wonderful. Well, all of this, warrants further discussion, and hopefully we'll find some forums for that in the future. Thank you so much, Dan, Celia, and Chris, for sharing your perspectives today. I know we're at time, so I'm going to turn it over to Colton.
Great. Thank you all so much. Thank you to all of our panelists for the great information. Thank you to our attendees for asking great questions to keep the dialogue going over the course of our time together. And I do want to put in a plug for the survey that will pop up in your web browser following this. Please, again, as our panelists have put in the time today, it's a short survey and it really does help with the content that CGS is putting out with our webinars and to pass along to our panelists. And as was shared in the chat earlier, I do just want to mention that the annual meeting is coming up in the first week of December in Washington, D.C. And the accommodations block rate will be closing this Friday, November 7th. So if you have not yet, please get your registration in and please get your accommodations booked so that you can have that discounted rate for the accommodation. Other than that, I want to also mention that Sean will be doing a lightning session at the annual meeting as well. So another reason to provide some feedback in that survey, as it may create some action and help inform the discussion that happens at our annual meeting as well. So thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.